sucked through a 17-inch opening of an underwater gate with immense force. This commercial diver found himself trapped in the worst way imaginable, rapidly taking in water. What began as a routine inspection of a marine power plant quickly turned into a living nightmare. What followed was completely horrifying. On July 15, 2015, 39-year-old Luke Seabrook was maintaining the Annapolis Tidal Generating Station on the coast of Nova Scotia, Canada. On his second day at the site, the experienced technician was diving into the reservoir on the Bay of Fundy side of the tidal barrage to inspect a sluice gate that controlled the dam's water level when his routine dive turned into a brutal accident. Luke was a qualified commercial diver working for Paul's Diving Services, a company contracted to maintain the station by Nova Scotia Power. While diving, he would be fully reliant on a full-face helmet connected to a surface-supplied umbilical, providing breathing gases, live video, and constant communication with his backup diver and supervisor on the surface. He'd performed similar inspections at the station before, but unlike those, this one was about to go terribly wrong. Since commercial diving ranks among the highest for workplace fatalities, divers are supposed to receive site-specific training on hazards before each dive. While Luke received basic instructions, Paul's Diving Services didn't have a formal dive plan in place, leaving crucial details such as how the sluice gate's status was confirmed and how the changing tides could affect his dive unclear. This was especially dangerous at Annapolis, where shifting currents were common, even when conditions appeared stable. But instead of the usual 5-hour window between tidal shifts, the recommended safe period for such dives, the inspection was scheduled during an outgoing tide, when currents were most unpredictable. This meant Luke was sent down at the worst possible time. Before Luke entered the water at around midday, operators closed the sluice gate. These gates are enormous steel doors that control the flow of millions of gallons of water rushing in and out of power stations. The gate controls were locked out, and sensors confirmed a tight seal. But staff at the station never visually checked the gate. Instead, they let gravity lower it, then walked along pulling its cables to feel for slack, assuming that meant it was sealed. This is important because it left a 12 to 18-inch gap between the reservoir gate and the river delta floor. On top of that, they also skipped a standard bag test, where a 5-pound sandbag is lowered and raised across the entire dam area. One of the biggest reasons why commercial diving is so lethal is differential pressure, or delta P. It happens whenever water levels on each side of a barrier isn't equal, creating a force which searches for any opening to balance itself. At stations like Annapolis, delta P is strongest during changes in the tide, when massive imbalances create a powerful underwater vacuum, and the risk of delta P was further increased by the Bay of Fundy itself. The area is home to the highest tides in the world, capable of reaching a vertical height of 16 meters or 52 feet. In this scenario, even the smallest gap in the reservoir gate becomes an unstoppable drain, sucking anything nearby straight through with tons of force. Unaware of the danger, Luke descended toward the gate, just as the tide receded. Luke had no warning. As soon as he got close to the gate, the powerful suction yanked him toward the bottom of the reservoir. Unable to outswim the current, he immediately told the surface crew to pull him up when his communications abruptly cut off. Fearing the worst, his backup and supervisory diver pulled on his umbilical line with all their strength for several minutes, trying to reel him in. But the suction created by the tidal pressure was too strong. When they realized they couldn't pull him up, they tied his line to a fixed object to hold him in place and called for emergency services while they tried to get his communications back online. Beneath the water, meanwhile, Luke faced a desperate battle for survival. Just seconds after the radio call, he was sucked into the narrow gap with overwhelming force. But rather than passing straight through, his helmet slammed against the gate, wedging him inside the gap by the unforgiving differential pressure. The impact was so violent, it broke 2 ribs in an instant. But his ordeal wasn't over yet. The powerful vacuum pulled his helmet and suit apart, exposing his mouth, while millions of gallons of water flowed through the gate. He was slipping out of consciousness as extreme pressure caused contortions to form across his body. At this point, the backup diver tried to jump in and help Luke, but the team stopped him, fearing he too would get stuck. Desperate and helpless, the crew was forced to wait for the flowing water to equalize on both sides, while an ambulance crew prepared for the impending emergency. After an anxious wait, the water pressure finally equalized approximately 45 minutes later, and they could start the rescue. Once they descended and reached Luke, they quickly noticed his damaged suit and suspected he'd taken in water. However, his umbilical cord was still attached, so there was a slim chance he remained conscious for longer than expected. The paramedics immediately tried to resuscitate Luke for 20 minutes, but to no avail. Officials sealed off the dam on July 16th to investigate Luke's death and uncovered disturbing details in the months that followed. Paul's diving services pleaded guilty to 4 charges related to the incident. It was ordered to conduct 15 safety presentations, on top of paying $34,000 in fines and donations to a safety education fund. The company later attempted to withdraw its guilty plea, arguing that the Crown's expert witness at sentencing was biased, but the appeal was dismissed. However, the fight for justice didn't end there. Despite managing the station, Nova Scotia Power faced no charges, something Luke's family claimed set a dangerous precedent. Experts later pointed out that Nova Scotia's diving regulations lag far behind other provinces. In places like Ontario and British Columbia, dive contractors must notify labor departments in advance of underwater work, making surprise inspections possible. But in Nova Scotia, oversight was minimal, leaving safety largely up to the contractors themselves. Luke's family later filed a lawsuit against Nova Scotia Power, which was dismissed under provincial law, as the company wasn't liable for a contractor's employee. The station was permanently decommissioned in 2019, and despite limited improvements, calls for stronger regulation and oversight in Nova Scotia continue today.